My wife had an affair and demanded an open marriage so she could keep seeing him. So I played along for months, secretly gathering evidence of her neglect and abandonment of our children, then quietly filed for divorce and sole custody, watching her worst fears come true in court. Hi everyone. I'm using a throwaway account for obvious reasons. My name's not really Mark, but let's go with that for now. I'm 35. My wife, let's call her Sarah, is 33. We've been married for 10 years, together for 12, and we have 2 kids. Our daughter Lily, who's 8, and our son Tom, who's 6. I think I'm writing this to try and bring some structure to the chaos that's taken over my life in the past 48 hours. Maybe putting it out there for strangers to read will help bring some clarity or at least serve as a place to vent. Professionally, I've spent the last 12 years working as a senior project manager for a big commercial construction company. The jobs are large, expensive, and always under tight schedules. That means long hours, 10 to 12 hours a day at the office or job site, is typical, and it can easily stretch to 14 or 15 hours when we're racing toward a project milestone or dealing with unexpected problems, which happen a lot in this field. Working weekends, at least part of Saturday, has become more of a norm than an exception. It's a tough, demanding career, no doubt, but it's also what's allowed us to live comfortably, buy a nice home, a good school district, and give Sarah the option of staying home without worrying about money. Before we had kids, Sarah worked as a freelance graphic designer. She was talented and had a steady stream of clients. When Lily was born, we had a lot of conversations about work, parenting, and what made the most sense for our family. Sarah felt strongly about staying home with the kids during their early years, and I supported that. My salary covered our expenses, and we both agreed that it was good for the kids to have a consistent parental presence. She gradually stopped taking on new clients about 6 months after Lily arrived, and since then has primarily identified as a stay-at-home mom. Occasionally, she'd do small design jobs for friends or local events, but more as a hobby than anything else. For a long time, I believed our family life was steady and secure. I managed my workload, and Sarah managed the household and everything to do with the kids. When I was home, I tried to be involved, bedtime stories, baths, family outings when work allowed. Things started to shift about 8 or 9 months ago, though, and at first, it was subtle. Sarah began saying she felt isolated, like she needed more social interaction. Her college friend Jessica started organizing girls' nights. Once a month at first, just dinner or a movie. I thought it was healthy and completely supported it. I'd take over with the kids, no problem. Then once a month turned into every other Friday. It became nearly every Friday night, and sometimes even a Saturday outing too. The name she mentioned started changing. Jessica came up less, and other, unfamiliar names came up more. Her behavior at home shifted too, though it was gradual. She became more glued to her phone, often smiling at messages or replying quickly. If I asked about it, she'd say it was just a group chat, or they were planning the next outing. She also started putting more effort into her appearance for these nights. New clothes, more time doing her hair and makeup. Again, I didn't think much of it. I figured she was just enjoying time with friends. The first real red flag came about 2 months ago. She suddenly put a new, complicated password on her phone. We'd always known each other's phone passwords. Not because we checked on each other, but just for convenience and transparency. When I asked about it, she said a phone update required stronger security. It didn't feel quite right, but I didn't press. Then, about 3 weeks ago, I was reconciling our joint account for some work expenses and noticed a pattern. Multiple charges at a place called Crimson Lounge, not the real name. I'd never heard her mention it, and it definitely didn't seem like somewhere she'd go with Jessica. There were 4 charges at this lounge over 6 weeks, always on a Friday or Saturday. There were also Uber charges too, in from an address in a trendy, but out-of-the-way part of town. No other reason for her to be there, especially that late. The dollar amounts weren't outrageous, but the pattern stood out. This wasn't her usual behavior. It left me with a growing sense of dread, but I was buried in a project deadline and pushed off dealing with it. That all came to a head 2 nights ago. It was Friday again, and Sarah went out for one of her usual girls' nights. She came home at 3 a.m. I was in bed pretending to sleep, but I was wide awake, partly from work stress, but mostly from the anxiety that had been building inside me. She was clearly tipsy, humming quietly as she got ready for bed. She left her phone on her nightstand, screen facing up. A moment later, it buzzed with a notification. I glanced over. The screen lit up. The preview read, "Tonight was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." It was from someone named David H. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just lay there, staring at those words. Then, quietly I asked, "Sarah, who is David H.?" She jumped, startled. Her face went pale immediately. She stammered, "David? Oh, he's just a friend of Stephanie's. He sometimes hangs out with our group." Still calm, I said, "I saw the message, Sarah. Tonight was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." That doesn't sound like a casual friend from a group hangout. That's when it all unraveled. She sat on the edge of the bed, facing away from me, and started sobbing. What followed was a messy, tear-filled confession. She admitted she'd been having an affair with this man, David, for the past 4 months. They met at Crimson Lounge one night when her friends didn't show up. Some of her supposed girls' nights were actually nights alone with him. She said she felt lonely, like I wasn't really there because of my long hours. She said David made her feel alive, seen, attractive again. She apologized over and over, said it was a huge mistake, said she still loved me and didn't want to destroy our family. I didn't say much. I just listened, asked a few questions about the timeline. Our kids were asleep in their rooms, completely unaware their world was crumbling. I didn't touch her. I couldn't. The next morning, after a sleepless night in separate rooms, I moved into the guest room. She looked awful. Puffy eyes, pale face. The apologies kept coming. Then, in the middle of all her guilt and regret, she offered a solution. With a shaky voice, but some weird sense of hope, she asked if we could consider an open marriage. She said she still had real feelings for David, but also loved me and didn't want to lose what we had. An open marriage, she said, would let her continue seeing David honestly while keeping our family together. I'd also be free to see other people if I wanted. She framed it as a modern, mature approach to a complicated situation, something that could help us avoid the damage of divorce. I was speechless. It felt like she wasn't asking for forgiveness, but for permission to keep the affair going, just with my blessing. Like she wanted to fit this other man into our lives, somehow make it all work under one roof. I told her I needed time. I still don't know what I'm going to do. So here I am, sitting in my small home office with the door closed. Lily and Tom are downstairs watching Saturday morning cartoons. Sarah's in the kitchen, moving around, trying to act normal. But everything feels off. Her presence is this heavy, inescapable weight. My mind won't stop racing. What comes next? What am I supposed to do now? When I first heard the idea of an open marriage, my gut reaction was pure disgust. But I'm also trying to think smart about this. What if saying no immediately pushes her to leave on the spot? What would that mean for the kids? Their stability and well-being have to come first. I work brutal hours. How would I handle being a single dad? That thought alone is overwhelming. Has anyone else ever been in a situation like this, where your spouse not only confesses to an affair, but then asks to bring the affair partner into the marriage? What do you even do first? Update. It's been 3 weeks since I first shared my story here. The flood of comments, advice, and private messages has been incredible. And I want to say thank you. Reading so many perspectives, some harsh, some compassionate, and some just plain practical, helped me start to break through the initial shock and emotional chaos. It made me realize that, while my exact situation felt isolating, the themes of betrayal and impossible decisions are sadly common. One question that kept coming up was whether there were warning signs with Sarah or if we ever tried therapy before all this. Looking back, I guess her wanting more girls' nights out and making comments about feeling stuck could have been signs. But she never directly expressed any deep unhappiness. When I'd ask if something was wrong, she'd usually just say she was tired or worn out from the kids. We never tried therapy. Honestly, I thought, maybe naively, that our marriage, though sometimes stressed, was solid at its core. When she apologized, she cried and blamed herself, but once she brought up the open marriage, the whole thing felt tainted. Her apology didn't feel like real remorse anymore. It felt more like regret over getting caught, followed by a quick pivot to try and keep her affair partner while also keeping our marriage and family intact. She said her feelings for David had taken her by surprise and that she felt torn. She truly believed an open marriage was the only way to avoid blowing everything up. The most consistent piece of advice I got, and the one that helped me feel like I had something I could actually do, was to talk to a lawyer. I made an appointment 2 days after my first post. I found a solid family law attorney through a referral from the Bar Association. That 1-hour consultation was the clearest, most empowering hour I've had in a long time. The attorney was straightforward and explained everything: divorce laws, custody, financial settlements, in plain terms. She told me that no matter what happened, I needed to start documenting everything. Sarah's behavior, my involvement with the kids, spending habits, and any communication about the affair or the open marriage idea. That documentation could be crucial in protecting myself, and more importantly, protecting the kids if this heads toward divorce. She also mentioned how an open marriage agreement might affect divorce proceedings. It could complicate things, but if there's proof of prior infidelity and current questionable conduct, it still holds legal weight. After that meeting, and after days of rereading your comments and thinking through the wreckage of my relationship, I made a hard decision. I realized I could never accept an open marriage, especially one born out of cheating and so obviously tilted in Sarah's favor. Still, I worried that an outright rejection might backfire. What if it caused her to retreat further, get sneakier, or make some impulsive move that would hurt the kids before I was ready? So, I came up with a strategy, one my lawyer agreed was emotionally difficult but reasonable for now. First, I told Sarah I was open to considering the idea. I worded it carefully. I didn't say yes. I told her it was a huge concept to process and that if we were even to explore it, it would take time, professional help, and complete honesty. I said I needed to understand everything, her relationship with David, her expectations, and that we need couples counseling to even begin to wrap our heads around this. I knew I was stalling. My goal wasn't to save the marriage through an open setup. It was to buy time, prevent her from going underground with the affair, and start building my own case. Second, following my lawyer's advice, I hired a licensed private investigator. It wasn't a choice I made lightly, but I understood why it was necessary. Their job is to quietly monitor Sarah's behavior, her time with David, any absences when she should be watching the kids, and anything that could be seen as neglecting her role as a parent or mishandling our shared assets. They started about 2 weeks ago. It's not cheap, but I see it as a necessary investment in getting a fair outcome for me and the kids. Third, I've gotten extremely disciplined about documenting everything. I started a password-protected digital journal and back it up regularly. Every day, I'll log Sarah's comings and goings, her explanations, her engagement with the kids, her moods, and any meaningful conversations, summarized as accurately as I can. I save texts and emails that relate to her affair or plans with David. I also track everything I do for her and with the kids. At the same time, I've made big, visible changes to take on the role of primary caregiver. This was the hardest part logistically. I had honest conversations with my boss in HR, letting them know I had serious family stuff going on and needed more predictable hours and less travel for a while. I didn't go into detail, but I stressed how I needed to be the stable parent. They were more supportive than I expected. Now, I work super focused while I'm at the office, then continue from home late at night once the kids are in bed. I've taken over mornings, breakfast, getting Lily and Tom ready, school drop-offs. I pick them up, take them to activities, go to every school meeting, doctor's appointment, make dinner, help with homework, and do bedtime. I'm not doing this just for legal reasons. My kids are everything to me. They need routine, and they need a parent who's actually present. Fourth, as my lawyer advised, I've taken steps to get a full picture of our finances. I collected 5 years' worth of bank statements, credit card bills, tax returns, investment records, and property documents. I also spoke to a financial advisor on my own to understand my position and to prepare for different possible outcomes. I opened a personal bank account for my paychecks going forward, but I still contribute to joint expenses through our shared account, which I'm monitoring closely for any odd transactions from Sarah. When I told Sarah I was willing to consider the open marriage idea, she seemed relieved, like a huge weight was off her shoulders. She genuinely seems to believe I'm seriously open to it now. She's been surprisingly candid about her ongoing relationship with David. She casually says things like, "Oh, David and I are going to try that new place on Friday," or "David had a really stressful day at work." Hearing his name spoken so casually in our home is a constant, jarring reminder of everything that's happened. It takes a lot of self-control just to keep a neutral expression. She hasn't made any real effort toward the transparency or trust building I said were necessary. Her idea of being transparent is just telling me when she's seeing him like she expects me to be okay with it. The private investigator has already sent several updates. They've been professional and discreet. Early reports confirm she's meeting David frequently, usually during the day when she claims she's just out running errands. There are photos of them together at restaurants, in parks, and going in and out of an apartment building the PI believes is his home. What's more troubling is that twice this past week, Sarah left the kids with a last-minute babysitter, once for Tom's after-school soccer practice pickup, and once in the evening when she told me she was just running out for an errand. Both times, the PI saw her meeting up with David. All of this is being carefully documented. Spending more time with Lily and Tom is the one good thing to come out of this. They've really responded well to the extra attention and routine. Lily, who's pretty observant, has said a few times, "Mommy goes out a lot now, and you pick us up from school all the time, Daddy." I like that. I keep my responses vague and comforting, never speaking negatively about Sarah. Honestly, it's exhausting. I'm basically a full-time single parent now, managing everything while also trying to keep up with a high-pressure job and dealing with the emotional strain of pretending this whole thing is normal. Sleep feels like a luxury. Our home feels surreal. We're like roommates, sharing kids and a past. Sarah is often upbeat, almost cheerful, like now that her secret is out, she feels free to pursue what she wants. She chats about groceries and school forms like everything's fine. We don't talk about our marriage or our future beyond her occasional comments about how lots of couples make open relationships work these days. My lawyer is happy with how things are progressing and the quality of the evidence we're gathering. He says showing a clear pattern of me being the primary caregiver, along with proof of Sarah's ongoing affair and potential neglect or financial misconduct, will put me in a strong position if this ends in a contested divorce, especially around custody and spousal support. I don't know how long I can keep this up. Every day feels like a performance. But for now, this is the strategy. Protect my kids, secure their future, and make sure that if this marriage ends, it does so in a way that reflects the truth, not the fantasy Sarah's trying to create where I silently suffer while she lives her open life. Thanks again for giving me this space to get it all out. I know this road isn't ending anytime soon, but I'll post again when there's a real update. Update 2. Final update. It's been 14 months since my first post. Feels like a lifetime, and about 13 months since my last update. It's been a tough journey, but the legal part is finally over. I think it's time to share the final outcome, for closure, and for everyone who's followed along and offered their support. The 3 months after my last update were probably the hardest. I kept pretending to consider Sarah's open marriage idea, even though we were still living together. Meanwhile, the PI kept collecting more detailed evidence. Her involvement with David didn't just continue, it escalated. She got bolder, staying out late on weeknights, saying she had work or social plans. But the PI's reports showed she was almost always with David. There were whole weekends she spent at his place, and even a 2-day wellness retreat she claimed was with a girlfriend, but the PI confirmed it was a getaway with David at a nearby resort town. During this time, I was doing everything for Lily and Tom, handling their routines, meals, school, appointments, and emotional support. Sarah barely interacted with them anymore. She was distracted, often glued to her phone, or just not home. One example, Lily had a lead role in her school play. We'd had it on the calendar for months. 2 days before, Sarah said she had a work thing she couldn't skip. The PI later confirmed she was having dinner with David. I noted it in my log, along with Lily's quiet disappointment. There were many moments like this, each one heartbreaking, not just for legal reasons, but because it showed just how detached she'd become. Emotionally, it took everything out of me. Staying calm for the kids, acting neutral with Sarah, and silently processing the PI's reports each night. It was overwhelming. I barely slept. The stress never let up. After about 5 months, and after consulting my lawyer, I made the decision to file for divorce. By then, we had a mountain of evidence. Detailed timelines, photos, video footage, financial records showing she'd spent money on David, including cash withdrawals, gifts, and meal expenses, and my own logs comparing her absence with my full-time parenting. My lawyer felt we had a rock-solid case, not only for divorce on grounds of adultery, but for winning primary custody and limiting spousal support based on her actions. We planned everything carefully. I got a new lease in the same school district to avoid disrupting Lily and Tom's lives. On the day we filed, while Sarah was supposedly at a yoga workshop, the PI confirmed she was actually with David. I moved the kids and the essentials into the new house. That evening, Sarah was served with divorce papers and a request for temporary custody. Her reaction, which I only heard about through our lawyers, was shock followed by anger. She felt blindsided and accused me of betrayal. She genuinely believed I was coming around to the idea of an open marriage. Finding out I'd been documenting everything was a serious blow to her version of the story. The divorce was contested, but not as drawn out as it could have been, because the evidence was overwhelming. Her lawyer pushed for joint custody, significant spousal support, and a bigger share of the assets, citing her role as a stay-at-home mom. They tried to argue that the PI had violated her privacy and painted me as bitter and manipulative. We had multiple court hearings. My lawyer presented the PI's testimony and all the evidence we gathered. My logs, the school and medical records, receipts, all backed up my role as the primary caregiver. We showed not only the affair, but her consistent pattern of putting David ahead of her family's needs. Even though the money she spent on David wasn't huge, it still counted toward misuse of marital funds. Her attempts to spin the story fell apart when compared to the facts. We tried mediation, but it failed fast. Sarah wouldn't budge on her demands. The judge's final ruling, which came about 2 to 3 months ago, was clear and thorough. I was granted sole legal custody, final decision-making authority, and primary physical custody of Lily and Tom. In the judge's written summary, they made it clear that the decision was based on strong, consistent evidence showing that I had been the steady and reliable primary caregiver for a long time. In contrast, Sarah was seen as lacking sound judgment and often prioritizing her personal interests over the core needs of our children. Sarah was given a step-up visitation plan. At first, it meant she had the kids every other weekend, from Friday evening to Sunday evening, and 1 4-hour evening visit during the week. For the first 3 months, these visits had to be professionally supervised at her expense. The court mandated supervision because of concerns about her recent detachment from parenting, and it was meant to ensure a safe, child-centered environment during her time with the kids. After 3 months of following the supervision terms, that requirement was lifted. All child exchanges were ordered to take place at a neutral public spot or through a mutually agreed third party, in order to keep direct contact between Sarah and me to a minimum. Sarah also asked for spousal support, requesting 40% of my net income for 10 years. Her attorney claimed she deserved it, because she had been out of the workforce for so long to raise our children. My lawyer responded by highlighting her background in graphic design. Even if it was rarely used, her relatively young age, employability, the short period she was actually a full-time, stay-at-home mom, and most importantly, her own behavior. The judge awarded her transitional alimony for just 18 months and at a much lower amount, about 15% of what she asked for. He acknowledged her time as a homemaker, but pointed out that her abandonment of parenting duties and the circumstances of a divorce, including financial misconduct tied to her affair, played a direct role in limiting the award. In essence, her own actions weakened her claim. When it came to dividing marital assets, the judge mostly followed state guidelines, but did make a small adjustment in my favor. This was to account for the marital money Sarah had clearly spent on her relationship with David: trips, fancy dinners, and gifts. While the amount wasn't massive overall, it was a clear nod to the financial consequences of her affair. The marital home was ordered to be sold, and after the financial adjustments, the equity was split. I used my portion for down payment on my current home and to build a stable financial foundation for myself and the kids. Through updates from the co-parenting app, used strictly for scheduling and occasionally for mutual acquaintances, I've learned that Sarah moved in with David shortly after the divorce and had to leave the marital home. They now live in an apartment. Her financial life seems very different now, much less comfortable. The small transitional alimony in David's income, along with whatever freelance design work she picks up, doesn't seem to come close to supporting the lifestyle she once had. From what I hear, the initial spark in their relationship has started to wear off, and reality has settled in. They're now dealing with everyday financial stress and the fallout of her choices, especially those involving the kids. Sarah's visitation with Lily and Tom follows the court schedule. For the handoffs, I now rely on my sister or a trusted friend to manage the exchange, avoiding any direct interaction. I've been told that the exchanges are civil, but clearly tense. The kids are respectful with her, but it's obvious their main emotional connection and sense of security is with me. Life for the three of us, Lily, Tom, and me, has found a new, steady rhythm. Our house is smaller than the one we used to live in, but it's filled with warmth and happiness. On the career front, I used the upheaval to negotiate a new role with better hours and less travel. Yes, it came with a slight pay cut and maybe a slower career path, but I'd make that trade every single time for the chance to be fully present in my kids' lives. They're thriving. They're doing well in school, have good friends, and despite the pain of the divorce, they've bounced back with impressive strength. Our bond has never been stronger. I want to thank this community again. This will be my last update about this chapter of my life. From here on, my focus is completely on the future, on raising my children and building a new life with them.